Hi everyone, today we have a special guest. This is my husband Josh. Welcome to our really squishy couch that is super squishy and bouncy and fun.
And eats you.
Yeah, and it eats you. Today we are here to talk about, and the reason I brought him in was because a couple weeks ago I did a video about relationship advice for people with visual impairments. And I thought, well, what would be cool is if we could bring in someone to talk about relationship advice for people who are dating someone with a visual impairment. Now, I am not completely blind, so the advice that he may have may differ a little bit from someone who's dating someone who's completely blind. But I think that he's got a lot of knowledge in this area. We've been happily married for about 8 months now.
That's right.
So take it away.
So I'm going to start off with 3 basic rules that you're going to want to know. The first one is, actually all of them are pretty simple, pretty basic. These are things that might surprise you. Number 1 is that no matter what a person's abilities or disabilities, they're a person, right? So you have to recognize that and not treat them any differently than you would anyone else.
Absolutely.
There's a show that I saw as a little kid that helped me recognize this. It was like a cartoon show. It was hilarious. But the guy asks this guru who's supposed to have all the answers. He says, "Well, how am I supposed to talk to a blind judge?" And the person says, "Well, if she's in the courtroom, you say, if it please the court." Right? And the idea was very simple. It's that, people you get judged all the time for all kinds of things. People, I know people that get judged because of the color of their skin, because of the way that their voice sounds, and nobody likes feeling like they're being judged because of that. So when you're dating someone or you want to date someone who has a disability, blindness or visual impairment, let them tell you what they can and can't do. Don't assume, right? Just treat them like a normal person and wait until they say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" before you, because it may seem like you're being the gallant knight, or perhaps if you're the lady in the situation, it may seem like you're being, comforting and that you're trying to support the person, but a lot of times it can feel different from that.
That's excellent. Yeah, and he's absolutely right in that. Every person is different and each disability is different. So the best way to handle something is to ask. That's excellent, sweetie.
Yep. So the second thing is to listen. And that kind of leans into the
Always
first one.
Always listen in any relationship.
Right. So these 3 rules are pretty simple, and they apply to all relationships. So really it's more like relationship advice with Josh. No, I'm just joking. But when you have any relationship with a person, be it your boss, right, your parents, your siblings, the relationship goes downhill if you don't listen. And it's even more important when it comes to romantic relationships. The whole reason for you to be in a romantic relationship is so that you know that a person knows you, right? That's what love is all about, is knowing that a person knows you and cares about you anyway. So you want to reciprocate. You want to make sure that they feel like they're known by you, and the only way to do that is to listen.
He's very good at that, by the way.
But it's my secret. But you can really help to kind of kickstart that process, like we were saying earlier, by asking the right questions. So one of the biggest things to listening is paying attention. And I know that sounds like it would be common sense, but you have to pay attention first. Before you can know what questions to ask. Like, for instance, sometimes and this just kind of leads back to the first point where you treat the person like a person, right? But rather than assuming that my wife can't do something, I pay attention, and when I see her struggling, that's when maybe she's a little too prideful to step up and say, "Hey, help me with this." And that's fine, so just be willing to pay attention to your surroundings. Don't just assume that they can't, but also don't assume that they can, right? Watch what's going on, and when you see somebody struggling, say, "Hey, can I help you with this?"
And let them say no. And then let them,
And if they say no, take them at their word. Take them at their word.
That's definitely one of my biggest pet peeves in life is people who jump to conclusions and think that they know more about what I'm capable of than I do. And it happens all the time, and it drives me crazy. But thankfully, Josh has not fallen prey to that. And he definitely lets me stumble around and push the limits of my capabilities and my independence. And when I need help, I've learned to ask for help.
And honestly, it works the other way too, right? Yeah. Just because you don't have a disability doesn't mean that, and we think of people, when we're talking about this subject, it kind of draws a dividing line, people with and without disabilities, right? But in all reality, it's more of a gradient, it's a scale. And I can tell you of a certainty that I don't have as much ability as an Olympic athlete. I just don't.
Really?
Right. And I don't act as well as an actor. I don't speak as well as a professional speaker. There's no, there's no on-off switch to abilities and disabilities. There are people too, right? So are you. You're a people too. And one of the things about giving help and assistance, this is the third thing, is being willing to accept help and assistance from someone. I am a stubborn guy. She'll openly tell you that.
His last name is Justice. Of course he's stubborn.
What can I say? But I have to know when to let her do things that she's better at than I am. And sometimes when you draw that dividing line and you look at a person as disabled or abled, you sort of assume that it bleeds over into other areas, and it really doesn't. And a lot of the relationship factor, and going back to this being relationship advice, especially romantic relationships, is that there's a balance. There's a balance between the two. You're like puzzle pieces, right? You have to fit together to make a whole. So specifically when we're talking about vision impairment, my wife can't drive, right? And I know that that's something that sometimes bothers her.
It's extremely frustrating sometimes, yeah.
I have to know that I am her ride, right? I'm her driver. And that's great. I'm excited to do that. That makes me happy.
He's a good driver.
But my version of art is stick people. If you've seen some of the art that she's done, I don't know if she's put it up on this channel, but she is a fantastic artist.
More of that to come.
Yes. And that moves into other areas of life. She's good at arranging furniture in the house and knowing how to make food look good on a plate and things like that, and I'm simply not. I mean, I can make the food taste good, but it's not going to look good, right? So being able to judge where that line falls is kind of that third thing. So once you treat the person like a person, you recognize that you're both, you're equals. Mm-hmm. You're equals. You may not be equally abled at something, but that's okay because none of us are equally abled at anything. We all are better and worse at things. I really, really stink at directions. And she happens to be fantastic at directions. In fact, I hear most visually impaired people are.
Yeah.
So
you need really good directions. Ask a blind person. It's true.
So I rely on her for that. That's something where I have to accept assistance. And that's basically your three things: is treat the person like a person, pay attention. Don't just sit back and let things roll. You have to pay attention and be active in a relationship. And then finally, really, after you've listened, after you've paid attention, treat the person like a person.
Another thing that I would add as a piece of advice for someone who is in a relationship with a blind person or is maybe have a blind roommate or something, be very careful what kind of obstacles you leave around the house. You can't just throw your dirty clothes in the middle of the floor because they may slip on it, the stuff like that. And when you move into a new space, and this happened when I moved here, I was unfamiliar with it and I was constantly bonking my head on stuff, or I wasn't familiar with the knives that we had and how long the knives were, so that got a little interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And
too many Band-Aids.
Yeah, I had to call him at work and be like, honey, where do we keep the Band-Aids?
Boy.
So just be conscientious of that. And, chair legs and all those fun things that you may not think about otherwise because you can see them.
Sure.
We can't.
It goes back to paying attention. Pay attention.
It's gonna be violent.
Yeah.
So, sweetie, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. And for those of you out there in internet lands, feel free to leave comments. Feel free to share advice if you have it or questions. I love this squishy couch time. I think we should have a squishy couch segment on this channel from time to time. Maybe other people around, and it'd be fun. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.